guest today is Jake Fogelnest. Jake is an Emmy and WGA-nominated writer, producer, and comedian. His career began in 1994 with his teenage public access show, Squirt TV, which became a cult hit and then made a real-life Wayne's World leap to MTV. Since then, he's been a writer and producer on everything from Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, the Wet Hot American Summer Netflix series, all the while maintaining a weekly podcast project on Patreon. And Jake lives in Los Angeles with his wife and daughter. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Revolutions Per Movie, Jake Fogelnest. Hi, Jake.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, depending on what side of the film we end up on in our discussion today. It's a thin line, man. There's certain films in your head that you imagine or you remember in a certain way, and then you revisiting them is different. And I feel like this is one of those. But before we get into Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the 1978 film starring the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton and Steve Martin and George Burns, we need to go back with you because Squirt TV, a TV show when you're 14, okay, so I want to break it down because I was a cable access kid too. I went and got my, not license, but you had to do training. You had to take tests, kind of.
In New York City, how it worked is, so if you could provide your own tape, and if you filled out like a piece of paperwork, it's like 2 pages long, anybody could get on the air. But if you wanted to use the facilities to film a show, you had to take their courses and things like that. And I went for the route of, I'm just going to film it out of my bedroom and drop the tape off.
Gotcha. So that's what I want to ask about. The original show, Squirt TV, which is you interviewing people in your bedroom and performing and, just on a very small scale. Like, what was the genesis of that? Was there like something you were reacting to that you just, this kind of didn't exist except for like the thought of like Wayne's World or something like that.
It's so interesting because I've been thinking about it's the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live in 2025. I don't know if you've heard or seen anything online.
Just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
This new little show.
So, I grew up in both Philadelphia and New York City. My father moved to New York City in 1985. And with that came Manhattan cable television.
Okay.
And I remember being really excited about public access television just in general, even before I had seen it. I had read about it in books. I think I had read about it online in the earliest days of bulletin board services.
Right.
Like,
Well, I have a quick question though. Is this the same station that like Stairway to Stardom would be on, or the Robin Fox show? Is that Robin Fox?
Robin Bird.
Bird. Yeah. Were these things of the same ilk? Like the same?
They're similar, but a little bit different. So Robin Bird, she was on leased access, which was public access, but you paid to be on it. And the way that worked, and it was cheap, right? So if you gave, I don't know the exact numbers, and there will be a big documentary film about all this stuff very soon. But if you gave Manhattan Cable Television something like $50 back in 1970, whatever, you would get airtime, and in turn, you could sell ads on that. Wow. Public access was very different. You could not do any ads at all, no commercials. But the government decided way back in the 70s, like, hey, if you're going to run all this cable wire under our streets in Manhattan, you need to devote a certain amount of these new cable channels for the public to use for community affairs programs. And yes, also they should be able to do leased access and advertise. What they thought they were going to get was, school boards talking about stuff.
Right.
They were not expecting Al Goldstein's
Right.
Midnight Blue.
Right.
They weren't expecting, Interludes After Midnight, which was parodied on SNL as the nude talk show.
Right.
And they certainly, by the 90s weren't expecting, some teenager in his bedroom. And to describe what the show was is essentially it was vlogging. If you go back to the earliest days of internet blogging or the earliest days of YouTube, that's what the show was. It was me. I started it when I was 14 years old, and whatever was going on in my mind that week for 29 minutes, that's what would get on the show. I paid no attention to copyright, licensing clips. So if there was a music video that I liked, I would show that. If there was a clip from a movie. And what happened very, very quickly is that the show got popular in Manhattan.
And how did you know it was getting popular?
I made a really savvy move. Before I started the show, I got myself a post office box. And at the bottom of the screen, throughout the whole show, there was a phone number. It said Squirt TV, and you could call a phone number and leave a voicemail. So I'm doing the show for about a month. I'm using the They Might Be Giant song Minimum Wage as my theme song. And a month into doing the show, I get a phone call from John Flansburgh from They Might Be Giants saying, "Hey, I'm watching the show, checking it out, digging it." I got a call and it's like, "Hey, this is Thurston Moore. You said on the show that you need a haircut. Kim will give you a haircut. Why don't you come on over here?" And I would be on the subway to school, 14, 15 years old, and they'd be like, "Hey, I saw your show." I have a theory as to why it happened the way it did. I was a big fan of Devo at 14, 15 years old and younger, but obviously I'm genetically predisposed to like Devo.
Yes, me too.
And so I would show a Devo music video, and my show was on channel C, channel 16. MTV was on channel 20. My show was on at 12:30 on Sunday nights. That was the same time slot, like MTV is 120 minutes was on. So my theory is why this took off is channel 20, people are channel surfing. They surf down 4 channels. They see a Devo music video. They're like, "Cool, a Devo music video." And then a teenage boy, very young looking teenage boy pops up. He's like, "That's Devo." And they go, what is this? What is this I'm watching? And they stayed tuned.
Right.
Had the show been on at a different time slot, had I had different pop culture interests,
right,
I don't know that it would have been a thing.
Did it do something to you as a 14-year-old to have this amount of attention on you, as well as, I'm assuming, musical heroes all of a sudden being like, "Hey, we'll give you a haircut"?
Did it warp my sense of self for the rest of my life? Yeah, completely. Yeah, it was absolutely insane. Did it create unrealistic expectations of
right.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. At the time, it felt normal. Like, "Oh, well, yeah, of course, this is what happens. Yeah,
right.
This is what happens." But now as a father, and I'm like, pretty weird.
Yes.
Weird what I went through.
Like, what was your setup originally in your bedroom, like camera-wise? How many cameras? How many people were working on it?
It was one camera, and it was me. And it was really, if there were a group of friends that I had at that time, I probably would have been really interested in doing sketches with them and collaborating. But again, my father moved to New York in 85, but my mother didn't make the move to New York City until like 93. So I, left all of my friends. I thought my life would be over. Moving from Philadelphia, I'm like, I don't want to move. You can't do this to me. All of my friends are here. I have one condition. I will only move to New York City if you let me get a public access show. My parents were like, sure, yeah, whatever. And it was me, one camera that I'd saved up money with a summer job, and high 8 and a VHS VCR, and that was the production value.
So who was the first guest that like made your heart stop?
Well, the first time a guest came to my house was the band Ween. What had happened was that, the show became this sort of, cult hit in Manhattan, and tapes started getting passed around from everybody to the Beastie Boys, Spike Jones, and it eventually got passed to, you ever see that TV show Entourage? So there's a guy, Ari, the character of Ari. It got the real Ari Emanuel. He got the tape.
Okay.
And yeah, but Ween were the first people to come into my bedroom. I gave them Jell-O. We hung out, and it was mind-blowing. It's the chocolate and cheese era. Yeah. I'm 15 at that time, so imagine, I'm pretty into Ween.
Right.
Pretty exciting stuff.
Was there ever anyone you could not get out of your bedroom when it was done? You're like, I gotta shut things down now, please.
Two things jump to mind. When we made the move to MTV, Cypress Hill did the first episode as a musical guest, and I just remember my mother. First of all, we had to make an arrangement with the building that we lived in,
right,
on Broome Street. Like, hey, we're going to film a TV show here. Is that okay? And for some reason, back in 1995 or 96, they were like, oh yeah. My mom comes home from work one day, Cypress Hill are in her house, and the entire floor smells like weed because they had gone off into a stairwell. That was probably challenging, more for my mother than for me. And then I particularly wasn't very excited to have Rob Schneider on the show.
Oh, yes. And so yeah, at this point, once you're on MTV, there are guest bookings, things kind of outside of your reach being influenced.
It wasn't outside of my reach. It was just like, hey, there was just nobody else available that week, and my concern was like, that's 3 people from SNL in a row.
But at that point, you had a booker, right?
Yeah, okay. At that point, well, most of it, we had a booker, though most of it was still my phone book.
Yes,
gotcha. Established quite a phone book.
Right,
by the time I was 16.
The MTV show that I've seen, the footage of, that is not a set. That's still your bedroom?
Yeah, that is still my bedroom. And the reason why it's still my bedroom is purely because of the movie Wayne's World. Wayne's World has this great joke in the movie where they rebuild Wayne's basement in a TV studio.
Right.
And Wayne's like, okay. And I obviously had seen Wayne's World, loved the movie. And I just thought, if we move my show to a set, it's going to be false. We got to still film it in my bedroom.
Uh-huh.
And MTV said, yeah, okay. And now, of course, at the same time, they gave me a budget to art direct my bedroom.
Okay.
By the time we had gone through the process of art directing my bedroom, it looked like a TV studio. So it would have been actually a more practical thing to just film the show in a studio. I remember the crew coming very early in the morning and still being in bed while they're, setting up cameras.
Oh my God. It is a really weird thing. Like, hearing the laughter behind the cameras when you move to MTV of like I didn't know how big the crew was. I don't know how many cameras.
I have to also express, like, it's small. Like when I say my bedroom, We lived on Broome Street, Broome and Bowery, and this was the early to mid 90s. So it was not the neighborhood known as Nolita yet. It was like restaurant equipment supply stores, and 5-6 blocks up was CB's, and then like, you know, like you'd see Jim Jarmusch getting coffee because he had been paying rent on the same place that he probably had for 20 years. It was a strange part of town, at least strange by contrast to the kids that I went to high school with, who were super wealthy, lived on the Upper West Side, and their parents were, I don't know, the physician for the Mets. So the bedroom was actually just a loft. We lived in a loft, me and my mom, probably less than 1,200 square feet. And this little section of it was cornered off and mine.
Right.
And all we did was we flipped the camera. Like if the camera was facing me, we just moved the camera over to the right, and that provided a wider shot.
It's an amazing illusion as somebody who didn't know. It was like, because I had heard about, the show that you had come from cable access. And so, again, you could hear it kind of in that same way as, was it Uncle Floyd? Is that his name? Where you hear like the gallery, you hear people laughing at things off screen, but you couldn't see the people laughing. So I could never get the sense of like the scale of it. So it's fascinating to me that it was actually still your bedroom.
It really was. Yeah.
God, that's
and
amazing.
It was small. I don't think there were more than 10 to 20 people in there at any given time.
That's so many people though for a bedroom still, like, but I get it, because at this point MTV is like, this is a flagship show now. We need to put energy and talent.
I don't know if it was a flagship.
Well, maybe that's the wrong word. Anyway,
you need a sound guy.
Yeah, but they were supportive,
Yeah.
And the guests you had were impressive, they were known people, even, if some of them were, maybe you'd still say like underground or alternative, like you're catching people like Liz Phair kind of at the height of her, indie hood of explosion.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, and this has continued my whole life. And it's just like, if there's somebody whose work I like, I have always been able to form a connection, reach out to them somehow, and have a pretty effortless conversation. And you're not like a dweeb about it, and you've got something cool to say. People will connect with you.
I totally agree. And it's a thrill. Like when I recorded my episode with Jerry Casale of Devo, seeing him smile during the interview, I was like, oh my God, I cracked Jerry. Like a notoriously whip smart, doesn't suffer fools person. Out of the gate, he knew it would be different. Same with Homer Flynn of The Residents. I was really like, he was just like, after the interview, he was like, thank you for not asking about the eyeballs. And, he was just like relieved that like, this is my chance. And I do feel like, people appreciate it if, you do really, you're not like just reading a quick press release about something. You've booked them because you want to talk to them. You have not an obsession with them, but like you have a fascination with their art, and it comes off, I think.
I think there's just I don't want to say right, but I think there's a genuine way of being a fan that if it's truly genuine, it comes through.
The show at some point, naturally comes to an end. Were you ready for it to end? What was that like for you?
Straightforward. This, and I've talked about this pretty openly. I was on drugs. You ask, did all of this stuff affect you? Yeah, it did. It did big time. Because I was this super interesting kid who's, into Devo and Ween, and they might be giants, but there was another side of it where I was like, a teenager in New York City in the 90s with an older girlfriend. And, probably not the greatest grip on the difference between yourself, external validation versus, just internal. I was troubled. So the show, quite frankly, ended while I was in West Palm Beach, Florida, having been whisked off to what was a absolutely terrible rehab center, because they're just, it was the 90s, and while there were rehabs and stuff, they were not really prepared for teenagers that young who had developed a drug problem at 17. So it was very rough. And, I remember coming back to my office at MTV after I completed rehab and stayed sober, to go to my office at MTV, and everything was boxed up. It was, pretty brutal. And I remember calling, my agent at the time and saying, well, gosh, what can I do? How does one become a writer at Saturday Night Live? And I'll never forget, I'll remember, they laughed. They're like, oh, your kid wants to be a TV writer now. And it was just all very sad. And I, in addition to having to learn how to live a sober life, and be in that completely awkward transition period of teenager to what is becoming an adult, I was pretty lost and adrift. And was this a fluke that this show happened? Is this, all I'm ever going to do? It was a very, very difficult time. And I am so grateful that I survived it and continue to survive it, and proud of like everything that I've done since, and have come to a place now where I know if I am dead tomorrow, that my obituary is going to lead with, yeah, he did the show out of his bedroom when he was a teenager. And I'm totally okay with that, because it was and still is just such a weird and remarkable thing that happened. But yeah, and I was absolutely not ready. The show was technically never, the second season was ordered.
Let's see you on set tomorrow. Well, yeah. You make the transition like into writing, and you like meet, peers at Upright Citizen Brigade and start doing stuff there. Is it hard after you've had such initial success early? Were people like accepting to be like, oh, it's Jake Fogelnest, let's just do this, or did they have like a stigma of like?
It's so funny. People were incredibly accepting. I remember the terror of taking the first improv class. What happened was I, got my act together. I got a job on the radio on K-Rock, doing a weekend show, not dissimilar from, Rodney on the Rock. But I got that show by calling the request line and saying, hey, I need a job. And a great DJ, Sluggo, was like, come up here. And they took a meeting with me, and they were very nice. But that was, the world of radio, and really, they treated me like a kid, as they should have. At Upright Citizens Brigade, it was, there's one guy in my improv class who was a jerk, but everybody else was super accepting. Adam McKay, I used to start at the same time that Squirt TV was happening, Luna Lounge, Rebar, it's the birth of alternative comedy in New York City. And I was going to all of those shows. I distinctly remember the Upright Citizens Brigade moving to New York City from Chicago, and they were pretty bold. They said, hi, we're, the UCB. We are going to start teaching classes. We're going to open up our own theater. This style of comedy doesn't exist in New York. We are going to get our own TV show. And New York said, yeah, that sounds great. Was it, that cut and dry? Probably not, but it felt that way. And by the time they opened up the theater, I had been going to see ASCAT for years at Solo Arts and all these places, and they opened up their own theater, and I became friendly with like Jimmy Fallon, Horatio Sands. It's just you're hanging out. This was the comedy world of New York City, which I was thrust into because of this TV show, and I had met Mark Maron when I was 7. That's a story for another time. And he's wonderful. But the UCB was so instrumental because it gave me people my age and a little bit older than me. And I was like, oh my gosh, there are people who also want to do the same thing that I want to do. They want to do new comedy, and we have a place to do it. And it was low stakes. There was freedom to fail. And yeah, there was just like one guy at the class who was like, hey, you're the Squirt TV guy. What do you need to be taking these classes for?
Right.
And I said, because I want to learn how to do this. I remember I was hanging out one night, and I was hanging out with like a murderer's row of brilliant improvisers.
Right.
Probably John Glazer, Adam McKay, Brian Stack. And they were just passing a beer can around, and they were doing a bit. They were like, this is Steel Reserve. This is, I don't have a wife. I don't have a family. I took a lawnmower and I threw it at a cop, and I drink Steel Reserve. And they were just making it up on the spot.
Right.
They're passing the can around, and, and I remember feeling like these guys are speaking a language. They have a skill set that I don't have. I'm cool enough to be sitting here, but I am not in any way, I don't have the formula that they have.
Right.
And I remember being out with Adam McKay one night, and he's like, you're pretty funny. Like, who's your improv teacher? And I said, oh, I haven't taken a class. He's like, that's ridiculous. You got to take classes. You need to get into a class with like Armando Diaz. You need to do that tomorrow. And the next day I woke up and I made out a check for $25. I dropped it off to John Ross Bowie at the UCB theater. I signed up for classes and, humbled myself at fucking whatever, 17, 18, 19 years old, and, learned improv.
That's incredible. I mean, your life and career, I mean, you've written for like Will Ferrell and Molly Shannon and Julie Klausner and Billy Eichner and Jerry Minor and Sarah Silverman.
Jerry.
I love Jerry. And then that felt so King of New York. I love Jerry.
No, but it's so Jerry Minor. We did this. That was an incredible experience. We did a show called Jerry Minor is a Black Man. He got hired for SNL. Didn't work out afterwards. Tom Giannis, who's a brilliant director who directed Tenacious D. We did this show at UCB with Jerry, and then we took it to Second City, ETC, and I got to learn all of this stuff about how to direct sketch from some of the most revolutionary people to do it. Tom Giannis did the show with Adam McKay called Pinata Full of Bees at Second City. They got hired for. I got really lucky in my life with mentors.
No, it's great. And you've done music videos, you have your podcast, you've directed shows, but is there a field, an artistic field that you haven't got to step into yet that you would love to?
If there is, it's my own fault for not stepping into it yet. I think about this a lot. We have all the tools at our disposal to make movies, TV shows independently. It's pretty easy. The barrier to entry is pretty easy. Why don't more people do it? And, I'm got to this sort of interesting place in life where I, things sort of did some sort of things backwards. And what's become really important to me in the last 5 years, we had right before COVID, I said, "Oh, I think I want to spend the rest of my life with this lady," and I got engaged. And then during COVID, I got married, and then we decided, like, I think we should have a baby, and then we had a baby. Then both my parents have passed away and stuff. So right now, I feel like I've just come out of this period of time of learning how to actually exist in a family that wasn't two parents that got divorced before you were born. And you're I have just been focusing on what it means to be a husband and a father, and I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, all right, yeah, I gotta also make a living and do some stuff that is artistic and also maybe somewhat commercial.
And I'm just glad that before we started recording, I could give you a little parental advice about how I grounded my daughter to not go see David Bowie on the Greatest Hits tour because she was being a terror that day.
I told my wife that, and she said, "That's a good parent."
It was so hard, but I was like, "No, you don't get to do that." And she was young enough that I don't think she knew, but like, yeah, it broke my heart. But at the same time, it was I had to do it. I had to
It's
do
not
it.
how the day didn't break out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a good story. Like, we'll always have that story at holidays. Yeah, my dad wouldn't let me see Bowie because I was being a little shit. I'm like, yeah, it's true,
You missed it.
But
Yeah.
you want to talk about a moment of time and people feeling like they can do anything and anything could get made. The film you picked today, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, is such an interesting film because it is full of people who are at the height of their success. Steve Martin, Alice Cooper, Aerosmith, the Bee Gees, Peter Frampton, even George Burns was a superstar, with Old God. And
yeah, this thing, it wasn't a small project.
No, it's so weird. And so as we get into it, I had no idea till recently that there was a stage show called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band on the Road from 1974. So I was always under the assumption that the Beatles were so protective of their music and their imagery and the language of it that I was shocked to be like, they were kind of piecemealing their stuff earlier than I remember.
It seems wild now when you think about how controlled the Beatles IP is.
Yes.
But yeah, not only was there was this weird stage show, but before the Sgt. Pepper movie came out, there was another movie called All This in World War II.
Yes, I remember that.
Which is just all Beatles covers set to footage from World War II.
Yes.
I am not a Beatles expert or historian, even though I have read and watched every Beatles documentary, and I can only assume that things were a little weird legally. Alan Klein, who just from all accounts seems like he was a great guy and a really solid businessman. Yeah. So I think that because, the Beatles were essentially in a series of lawsuits with each other, and doing some of the finest diss tracks ever, that like weird things like this would happen, like this weird off-Broadway show, which I can't fathom what it looked like on stage.
It's so weird because the plot it's similar to this in a way. It was, Billy Shears and Strawberry Fields, and they're just using like names from the Beatles albums, but it's so weird. Like when I think about Sgt. Pepper's, I never in my life, till I saw this film as a child, thought of the military aspect of Sergeant with it, right? I was just like, it's just a costume, right? And to be so literal that there's like, we're going to open the film with World War I, and basically the band is going to stop wars. That basically it looked like the people in the fighting the wars all of a sudden look like an ice cream truck has shown up when they hear like a band of like a marching band play some kind of Beatles songs.
Don't worry about an impending Holocaust. There's a tuba down the street.
Yes.
And also, like, on paper, this film, it could seem like a sure bet because it's produced by Robert Stigwood.
Yeah.
This movie comes out. You have Saturday Night Fever, which is just a win. And the movie holds up. I think it's an incredible film.
And just so listeners know, Robert Stigwood was the head of RSO Records, but also was, the producer behind Saturday Night Fever. He managed Cream, the Bee Gees, Grease, Bugsy Malone. He was just like
a powerhouse producer,
absolutely,
manager,
publisher. He owned everything.
Yeah, a true impresario.
Yes.
And so he is Saturday Night Fever is out and is a huge success. Grease is also released in 78.
Yes.
And then I believe it's the summer of 1978. This movie, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, just the idea, I always refer to this movie as Cocaine, the motion picture.
Absolutely. It's because so that way.
It is literally like, okay, we're gonna create a story around the Sgt. Pepper album and other Beatles songs, mainly from Abbey Road.
Yes.
We're gonna put Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees, and they are going to be Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And we're gonna build a story. There will be no dialogue. There is no dialogue in this movie except for George Burns being a narrator.
Yes.
And there are singing robots and
with Gibb masks on and completely like fetishized leather. I mean, latex outfits.
Latex, and also Alice Cooper's involved, and he's brainwashing, and Steven Tyler is going to get his ass kicked by Peter Frampton, and this is a can't lose scenario. Oh, and by the way, everybody in show business, we're filming the finale. You come and just show up. Everyone from Shauna Na to Dame Edna.
But also, the director was the director of Car Wash, which was like a big hit.
Huge fan.
Which Way Is Up? Yep. And later did Crush Groove and Disorderlies, which I didn't know. He also directed the Fat Boys movie.
The Fat Boys.
So that's Michael Schultz. But the funniest thing is the person who wrote the film, Henry Edwards, did not write much else, and he followed this film up with here's the what is it called? The tagline of the film, or what was it called when you have the little nugget?
The tagline.
Here's the tagline of the film he followed up.
Yeah.
It says, when oil is discovered in a small town, some greedy prospectors hire a gang of wild bikers to scare the town folks away. However, when a group of young pilots stumble across the underhanded plot, they plan an effective retaliation in the Great Skycopter Rescue. There is so much hot air balloon in this film.
This guy's got a hot air balloon thing. The writer.
It's like so weird that no one's really checking like what's going on, because they just assume we can't lose. We can't lose.
Yeah. Think of something that is so expensive and borderline unfilmable. Yeah. We're going to do it.
Yeah. And George Martin producing all the tracks.
That's the strange thing is, so there's a couple things. You got George Martin went in and produced all of the music which is, it's a lot of Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees, but it's also Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah, Killer, who are Killer.
Yeah, and that was sort of a legitimate hit from the record.
Yes.
At the beginning of the movie, and I just realized this watching again, Dee Anthony is one of the like above the line producers. Dee Anthony was Peter Frampton's manager at the time, and also worked with Devo. So I don't know what.
Oh, Devo should have been in this. Could you imagine?
Could you imagine? Yes, this is, this is happening as their first album.
She's Leaving Home by Devo.
And, after this movie, Dee Anthony was no longer Peter Frampton's manager, but it's just a movie that, like, you're only 11 minutes into the movie and you're like, okay, George Burns is singing Fixing a Hole with Two Kids in Pigtails.
I remember being so bummed out seeing this film as a kid.
What was your experience of watching this as a kid?
Well, 10 minutes in, you're like, oh, this is what this is. I'm uncomfortable with what they're doing to some of my favorite musics. Because you're young, right? At this point, all I have is my parents' record collection, and a lot of it is Beatles. I was obsessed with the Beatles. My first concert at the age of 10 was seeing, I was 8, seeing the Wings Over America. My parents took me to the Kingdom to see the actual show that rock show was filmed for in Seattle.
No way.
Yes. So I was like,
that beats mine.
But I was all like I didn't know if the Beatles had broken up. I didn't know what a band was. I didn't know what I just didn't know yet, right? What the Beatles were, because I didn't have an older brother, or my parents didn't sit me down and go like, oh, the White Album actually came out after this, not after Red Rose Speedway by Paul McCartney. Like, I had no timeline. These albums were just showing up in my house. So
wow,
I just remember feeling so sad. Yeah, distrustful. Yeah. Like, it was so false. And nothing seemed real. Like, their voices, like when they're doing Gotta Get By with a Little Help by My Friends, like right out of the gate, the Bee Gees, one of the most amazing vocal bands of all time, are doing the most linear, nasal, just boring, soulless thing with it.
Their faces don't look right. Like they're smiling in a way that feels it's so interesting, because your initial childhood reaction, and you are you're a little older than me, and my initial childhood reaction was, I love this thing.
Okay.
I absolutely think this is so great, but I also was coming to it with a full understanding of the Beatles, and that, yes, the White Album was released before Abbey Road. I don't know how much I was like, okay, I need to have these albums in mono versus stereo. Not quite there yet, but definitely a little bit informed. And I think it was because I had seen a 1982 documentary called The Complete Beatles.
I'd seen that too, but that was, that was after this, right?
Yeah. This film had been out and rejected, and I saw it for the first time on home video. You had the experience of seeing it. It's just absolutely, like, I was like, this is so much fun.
No, I get it. And that's what I was looking for, because I was a child looking for fun. But the things that they think are funny in it, like Sergeant Pepper dying, he plays a little horn thing and then he has like a heart attack. And then it's like,
nothing, no bits work.
Yeah, nothing, none of the humor works in it. And I was like, this film isn't for me. Who is this for?
That's the key question, is who is this for?
Oh, I have an interesting thought on this, because I found a quote from Robin Gibb.
Oh, I know the quote. Please.
It is so. It's just, I can't imagine. So he says, kids today don't know the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. And when those who do see our film and hear us doing it, that will be the version that they relate to and remember. Unfortunately, the Beatles will be secondary. You see, there is no such thing as the Beatles. They don't exist as a band, and they never performed Sgt. Pepper live in any case. When ours comes out, it will be in effect as if theirs never existed. When you hear the Beatles do Long Tall Sally or Roll Over Beethoven, do you care about Little Richard's or Chuck Berry's version?
The arrogance, and I'm so hesitant to say this because, obviously Andy Gibb passed away,
yes,
cocaine and stuff. But if that is not a cocaine-fueled statement, then whoa.
This is those kind of things where nobody said no to anyone. These people who are in the film are at the height of their powers. No one is saying this is a bad idea. Oh, this is not funny. The music doesn't sound good. It's like, yes, 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 yes.
And and in some cases they're lying. So like D. Anthony, she's Peter Frampton's manager. He's like, listen, Paul McCartney is going to be in this movie. Not only do we have all the Beatles songs, but Paul McCartney's going to be in the film. And, Peter Frampton has signed on. It's day one of filming, and he finds out Paul McCartney's got nothing to do with this thing. And he can't get out because he'll be sued. He's coming off Frampton Comes Alive. It just... The reaction from the audience, by the way, the movie did turn a profit, a modest profit, but it was just critically and commercially lambasted.
Yeah.
Because it was sacrilegious to take this, this Beatles music and they didn't even, like, the Bee Gees had the disco period. They weren't even doing like a hard disco take on anything. There are pieces that work. Like, I do think Robin Gibb's version of "Oh Darling"
I think that's totally cool. I think their version of "Nowhere Man" is very Bee Gee-esque.
Where they do them, where the Bee Gees do themselves, that's when it works. But Janet Maslin has this review where she's like, is this supposed to be a film? Is it a record album? Is it a t-shirt? It's the ultimate multimedia mishmash.
And it looks cheap for an expensive film. It's shot on back lots.
Oh, it's shot on the Sony lot. It was then the MGM lot, and then the interiors were shot on the Universal lot.
One of my pet peeves in movies is when you're like, oh, those bricks are not real. Like, they've got a certain cleanliness to them, and look, this is just all facade. And even as a kid, I was like, this is like, where am I? Like, this just feels gross.
It's sort of the opposite of Car Wash too, because Car Wash, they put you right, the director Michael Schwartz puts you right in the car wash. The authenticity of that and the way they integrate the soundtrack, the Rolls Royce soundtrack. Car Wash soundtrack is one of the greatest double record sets of all time. And I also don't fault the director for, like, this is a big gig. This is a big gig. Especially he's a black man who's a film director in 1978. But it's a movie by committee. It's cocaine fueled,
and the script sucks. I mean, that's what really it comes down to. They came up with this idea that basically the town stays pure because they have these certain instruments by Sgt. Pepper's locked up. But the film moves because there's no dialogue, except, like you said, for George Burns explaining things. It's like, if things get stolen, they just get stolen, right? If somebody wants to walk in and steal Sgt. Pepper stuff, it's not explained. It just shows them leaving with it. And those things, even as a kid, were driving me crazy. Like, the plot gaps in it. I just was like, all right, they're in a hot air balloon to go get signed after being discovered a day before. And now all of a sudden they go through the clouds and now they're on an airplane going to meet Donald Pleasance, who is quite good in this film, I will say. Donald Pleasance wearing a toupee like just being a open, shirt, like mogul, trying to seduce the band with drugs and sex is like,
with
he's
large
great.
goblets of unidentified liquid,
Yes.
and then what is obviously Quaaludes. Yeah.
You get to see the Bee Gees have a mock orgy by a fireside, but it's so funny because half the film is people going, Maxwell, da da da, like speak singing,
doing that speak singing. Yeah.
Like, George Burns, Donald Pleasance. I want you so bad. I want you, woo, woo. And you're like, that's an amazing song. Like, this is where you go with it. Like, so it's really confused. And the film just stalls time and time again because the scenes within it are very short.
Yeah. It's not a long movie. It's not like The Brutalist or something. It can't be. It's 90 minutes, man. It's pretty tight, wall to wall Beatles songs.
Less lip sync than The Brutalist.
To me as a kid, I saw this film because the video store was home for me. People do therapy, right? You go therapy, you do this EMDR therapy, and they ask you to, picture a soothing place. For some people, it is a white cave. Maybe it's the ocean. I'm not joking. When I did this therapy, and I was supposed to go to a happy place, I was picturing the VCR, RCA, Selectavision top loader VCR, this small batch of tapes that I had. That is what calms me. And that's why I'm drowning in physical media.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know I had a younger brother till today. Jake. Oh my God. It's so good to finally meet you, brother.
Yeah. So Sgt. Pepper was one of the tapes. It's like,
yes,
Blues Brothers, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the movie. For some reason, the Eat to the Beat Blondie video album.
Oh, killer. Sure. Well, that was where the music and the music section in a video store was very small. And, like I was dying to find a copy of Devo Vision, The Men Who Make the Music. But, but it just wasn't showing up. But you'd see the same things over and over again, in a music section, the Last Waltz, the Eat to the Beat thing you said. Maybe a Cars retrospective video.
That Heartbeat City thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. For me, coming in, and what's weird is that I did have this sort of understanding of like, yeah, okay, this is not the Beatles. This is its own thing.
Right.
And for me, it was also an introduction to fucking Aerosmith. So,
me too.
I'm watching this movie at the earliest 1982, 1983. My mother was not hip enough to have a copy of Alice Cooper 80 Flush the Fashion. So this is the first time I'm seeing Alice Cooper. I already loved the Bee Gees because Saturday Night Fever, and I don't know why I had access to the R-rated version and not the PG version, but I did.
I saw both in the theater.
Yeah, I have a poster. It is now rated PG, so that everyone can enjoy the music of the Bee Gees, so that everyone can watch John Travolta dance, so everyone can catch Saturday Night.
It was so weird.
Fever. Yeah, it's just it's the TV edit, but they. Grease was out and they were like, yeah, we can double feature this. And it was a time before video stores.
Right.
So, so taking in Sgt. Pepper as a very young kid, I think what I saw was just the possibility of what could be done with music and what could be done with film. And it was like, hey, you could do anything because this exists. And I don't know that I was necessarily looking to the movie for a solid narrative. As I've gotten older and I've returned to this movie kind of every 10 years. Last time I had watched it, I went to see it with Rachel Lichtman and Greg Turkington at the New Beverly.
That's a good date.
Just one night. And I don't think the three of us have ever hung out again since. It was not a filled theater, and we were laughing, and there were some people behind us, and they were laughing through it. Then it got to, Rob and Gibb doing our "Oh Darling," and I just remember Rachel Lichtman turning around and going like, "No, this part you don't laugh at."
Right.
And kind of shushing.
That's so her.
It was so her.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Her episode is like, it is an evergreen. The episode that she did on the Hollywood Palace. It's like beat by beat, every single frame of the Hollywood Palace we looked at an episode. She doesn't miss anything. It's incredible.
And an aesthetically gifted human being.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have this love for this movie, while at the same time I also recognize that it is the like ultimate cash grab. And in this world that we live in now of IP and remakes and stuff, this Sgt. Pepper movie still stands out as like, who did they think this was for? As as Paramount does an entire Grease TV show that had to take place in the 50s that doesn't even, you can't even watch it anymore on Paramount Plus. Like, it's just like, all right, it's IP for the sake of IP. And it's like, there's been worse IP.
Oh, absolutely. This is a film that I want to love in a way that, there are certain things that you love, like the apple, right?
Sure.
Which is, this like Adam and Eve with the devil, disco, cautionary tale musical.
It's the Golden Globus disco musical.
And I love that film. I can watch it. I'm entertained. It's not good. The songs aren't awesome, but there's something about it that I'm like, it has a little bit more of a like, we're going to put on a show for you tonight. And we're going to do it right. Like, there's an energy to it that's like, we're going to blow you away. This film is so, like, removed. There's a distance to the performances. There are some things that work. And, you mentioned, I think Earth, Wind, and Fire are killer in it.
Steve Martin's first film.
Really?
Ever.
This is his first film?
It's his first appearance in a motion picture.
That is incredible, because that just shows... So he was just a superstar from Saturday Night Live and comedy albums. He was a mega star, but this, wow, that's
and
weird.
He signed on. He's like, I'll. If you look at it in the early trajectory of Steve Martin's career, it's just like, well, this seems like I've got my bit that I know that I'm gonna, do my thing with, and the movies on paper seems like, how could this lose? Grease, Saturday
Oh my
God,
he's with superstars, so he is by default the superstar comedian in this film.
And I think then he does, the short film, The Absent-Minded Waiter, which is absolutely classic. It's nominated for a short film Academy Award. And, then he does The Jerk, which is,
oh my God,
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, written by him and Carl Gottlieb, who did Jaws and stuff. But the first time he shows up in a motion picture for the same studio, Universal, is the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band movie, doing Maxwell's Silver Hammer.
Yes, and that scene always drove me crazy as a kid too, because the dancers aren't in sync at times, and I'm like, just do another take. Just do another take, please. Like, but they're probably like, well, Steve was the best in this one. But I'm like looking at all the choreography trying to be synced up, and I'm like, oh, that person blew it. It's so funny where your eye goes to.
It's very funny to have notes on this movie that has been like, that obviously had a lot of involvement.
Well, and it's so funny because they're basically the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton. They get, whisked away from Pepperland to have a record contract. They sign their stuff away. In the meantime, Mean Mr. Mustard steals the stuff from the instruments from Pepperland, from Sgt. Pepper's band, and is dispersing them out. Maxwell's, Steve Martin, who's playing Dr. Maxwell, is going to get like the coronet, and Alice Cooper, who's playing the Sun King, is that right?
That he's the Sun King. I
yes,
believe.
Who has like a cult of people. Is getting a different instrument. And Aerosmith is getting an instrument.
We hate love. We love joy. We love.
So there's basically a fight scene between the Bee Gees and the hench people in this film. Steve Martin doing like a Star Wars lightsaber fight with Peter Frampton. Yeah. And Peter Frampton keeps getting his ass kicked over and over again in these early sequences. And then he's kind of brought back to life through electricity.
He's brought back to life through electricity.
Yeah.
From the power of love, not involving Hugh Lewis. It's bizarre.
Yeah, George Byrne just shows up and be like, well, he got out of that jam. 1 down, 3 to go. It's just
1 down, 3 to go.
It's so weird. But I do think that the sequence with Alice Cooper is quite stunning visually. Really
pretty cool looking.
Pretty amazing. You have these rear projected psychedelic images of Alice Cooper post rehab, like looking quite tired still, with like a mustache just rake thin, just being a weirdo behind this cult, like he's outside, he's like this big figure, but behind these computers, he's just kind of a regular Joe.
It's a real if Doug Henning was the Wizard of Oz situation. Yeah.
Perfect. But that scene is quite creepy. Stylistically, it's like it just goes for it in a way that a lot of the rest of the film doesn't. Like Steve Martin's set is like, it just feels like a set.
They're doing a comedy routine.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, oh, this is the funny guy that you've seen from TV, and this is a comedy piece. The Alice Cooper, I think it's supposed to be sinister, because Alice Cooper is also like, a monster.
Yeah, he's good in it. When the finale, when they go to meet Aerosmith to do Come Together, an awesome version of that song.
Yeah. It's on one of their greatest hits albums,
it's so, they look great. They look like cool. You know what I mean?
It's the Toxic Twins in at the height of their powers.
Yes.
And Permanent Vacation comes out in like 86, 87, that Aerosmith album. And I remember being like, oh yeah, these guys from
Sergeant Pepper.
From Sergeant Pepper. Oh, these guys rule. I'm gonna go see them with Skid Row.
Well, I want to ask you about Strawberry Fields, who's played by Sandy Farina.
Sandy Farina, yeah, co-lead vocalist from Hands Across America.
That's so weird. She is supposed to be like the heart in this film, like the one.
Yeah, she's the ingenue.
Yes, exactly, and they don't give her a lot to do. Like, she is pretty withdrawn emotionally.
I hate to say it, but I think they sort of had underdeveloped that character of Strawberry
Absolutely.
Fields.
Yeah, so she, spoiler alert, the show, I'm going to spoil things, that she falls to her death during the fight with Aerosmith after, they kill Steven Tyler too. And I just wonder, do you think anyone ever cried at the moment where she's like, they're doing the burial, or
when they're taking her through a glass coffin and singing "Carry That Weight," Golden Slumbers, "Carry That Weight"?
Do you think anyone ever cried at this point in the movie after all they've been through? Like, because they're really leaning into the drama here.
Yeah, they really, that's really interesting. I never thought about anybody having a genuine human reaction to this movie. I really haven't until this moment. But like the way that is played, it is like, yeah, it's at a point in a narrative, in a film, where the audience would be expected to have an emotional reaction. And I never once stopped to think, I don't think anyone has been gripped by the drama, the human drama.
No, isn't it weird? Because afterwards, you get Peter Frampton singing "The Long and Winding Road," and he's really depressed. He's really in it, right? He's trying his hardest to make things sad. Then you get a depressed Bee Gees sequence.
He's trying to do so much with his eyes. Everybody,
I know.
Because again, there is no dialogue. They are using these Beatles songs, which really don't have anything to do with each other.
Right.
They are using these songs to forward a story that is barely there. No dialogue. And it's Peter Frampton's first acting role. So
yeah,
it's all on the face. It's all on the face. And he just doesn't have it.
None of them can. I mean, the Bee Gees, like doing Day in the Life after, Long and Winding Road, they're just sitting around singing by water.
And, by like a pond.
But they're looking at each other like, oh, like my sad brother.
We've just like it's the like the end of Fruitvale Station or something. Somebody needed to draw a parallel between the
there you go
movie and Fruitvale Station. It's like
they can't act. That's it.
It had to be hard for these musicians who are, all at the top of their game to find something to emotionally grab onto at a time where it wasn't even particularly cool to be seen lip syncing on television.
Right. No, it's true. Like, yeah, you're right. This is still like midnight special to the max.
It's a flawed, like the whole thing is a flawed premise to ask of any creative, and then to put it out to an audience. It's it didn't work.
Also, it's interesting because you lip sync to Day in the Life, which is a very emotional song. It's hard. Like, what are you going to do while you sing it? Like, are you going to act out all the parts of the song while you sing it? Like, what do you do?
I imagine you get a newspaper. I read the news today.
Exactly,
oh boy,
right.
Mime a newspaper and
right. So if you're not gonna go like Stiv Bators with it, and just like lean on a microphone over the river, and you're just left to be like, hey, you sit here, you stand here, and where you're gonna roll the tape of your recording of Day in the Life. Now it's time to act. It's just like there's not a lot to do.
I've never seen a movie where you can see the actors are so self-conscious about if they're getting the blocking right.
Yes.
Like everybody's really like sort of like, am I hitting my mark right? There's just a nervousness in the air. This viewing, I really was like, oh, there's a everyone's really uptight.
Yeah, I think I think it's just a collision of, like you said, just probably, speculating, but drug culture on a set with a bunch of people just thinking they're making the greatest thing ever, and nobody's saying this isn't working, right? They put the film out. I guarantee they were like, we have a hit. We've done it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like they looked at it and were like, it's not funny. It's not sad. The music doesn't work. It's like
it's spectacular. I mean,
right.
The same studio, Universal, 2 years later does Xanadu, which I happen to love.
I love Xanadu.
But Xanadu is another movie like the way that Gene Kelly meets Michael Beck is like, hey, old man, what you doing up there on that rock? That's how they meet. He's just playing clarinet on a rock. Like,
but there's dialogue.
Yeah, because they had Bruce Valanche come in and like help and
right. I think that makes a difference. Like, I think if this film had, because I've seen the Bee Gees, they could be funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen their TV specials, I've seen their concert stuff. Like, they have a natural relationship, like pecking order and the humor and how they are self-deprecating and things. It would have been really smart, I think, to have somebody come in and like they did with Hard Day's Night and other films where they're like, okay, we get who these people are. Now we can kind of ride around them and give them something to do.
But that's the thing. See, this is the thing. The Bee Gees, you're talking about if somebody was to get to know the Bee Gees, a writer getting to know the personality of the Bee Gees, but the Bee Gees were playing the characters of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club
Band.
That's
true. Which I know so well as characters.
Again, going back to what you're saying, they're just costume. It's a flawed. It's a flaw. The entire thing is a flawed premise. This might have been the best off-Broadway show. I know John Lennon went to see it. It might have been the greatest off-Broadway show ever. But it didn't translate to screen. And there's not a single person that's involved with making the movie that doesn't go, I'm proud of that.
There's one kind of legitimate Beatle thread in it, and he comes at the end. It's Billy Preston. So they had this stupid weather vane in the film that just keeps like changing position depending on where Mr. Mustard's magnet is. And
just that there's a character in this movie his name is Mean Mr. Mustard.
Billy Preston, this stupid weather vane, is just eventually, we've seen it throughout the film doing its stupid left, right, where's it going kind of moments. During Day in the Life, basically Billy can't take it anymore, Peter Frampton, and he climbs out and he is going to commit suicide because he can't take it anymore with Strawberry being dead. He jumps during the climax of Day in the Life, and the weather vane spins so fast all of a sudden that it turns into a real-life Billy Preston.
Yes. By the way, imagine, it was the 1970s. Imagine if the movie just ended on Peter Frampton as Billy Shears. He jumps, kills himself, and it's just that last chord of A Day in the Life, and the credits went up, and it was just this downbeat 70s ending. That would be amazing. But that's not what happens.
No, he basically... He jumps, Billy Preston shoots, I don't know, lasers, let's say, out of him.
I would say they're rainbow lasers.
Yeah, and he freezes
time.
Peter Frampton just stops, right?
It's like, no. Billy Preston is playing God, is the only way you could interpret it.
Which is weird because George Burns is my only God from Oh God. So he's George in this film.
To be clear, he plays Mr. Kite for some reason. So Billy Preston, he stops time, and then he sings "Get Back," and basically everything that has happened bad throughout the movie, which is not much, he undoes it.
Yes,
and the town of Heartland is saved. I assume the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and their associates will continue to have success in the music industry, and their girlfriend Strawberry Fields is alive, and the town is prospering, and it isn't turned into a slum anymore.
Yeah, that's the other funny thing in the film is whenever they show something bad happening to the town because the instruments have been stolen, which means that the town of Pepperland is going to get decrepit. It's basically people playing video games and pinball and kind of wandering around. You're like,
there's a real dangerous arcade element that comes in, and you can tell maybe some people are up to, I don't want to say necessarily that it is prostitution, but there is sort of red lights that flash in windows, broken windows. It's the broken window theory that the town really goes to hell in a handbasket when these instruments get stolen.
I bet there were some people at the studio who were like, this video game stuff is going to kill our industry. We need to shut this down. And the way we do it is we're going to put in the film some anti-video game stuff. Parents are never going to let their kids go to the arcade again. We're going to get that money back flowing into the records as it was meant to be. But all I was doing as a kid was trying to clock all the games, right?
Figure out what games were in.
I was like, well, what's that? That looks cool. What's that? Because obviously I was like, I could be playing video games right now at an arcade instead of watching this damn movie.
So think about this too. Like, they pressed up. So if you want to get a copy of this soundtrack album on vinyl, it is readily available. This is not
absolutely.
It is not a hard thing. If you ever have been in a record store, there is at least 5 to 6 copies, sometimes sealed, of the Sgt. Pepper soundtrack with the poster and the inserts so that you can order the Sgt. Pepper movie memorabilia.
Did you have this record?
Oh, I have one copy from when I was a kid on the RSO, and then I have one that is I guess an international version on A&M. It's on pink vinyl.
Oh wow! Did you have like any of like the books on it or any of that?
I have the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band movie novelization, which is the greatest movie novelization ever written, because obviously Billy Preston, he stops time. It's a happy ending, and then there's this before the credit sequence where a bunch of the stars of the 70s sing the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band reprise. In the movie novelization, I am not exaggerating. The last like 10 to 11 pages of it are just a list of every musician you could think of. And Chuck Berry was there, and Elvis Presley, and
oh my God,
Eric and the Dominoes. And, and it goes on for 11 pages as if the person contracted to do the movie novelization had a page count that they needed.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It is the funniest thing.
I think we just came up with our first Revolutions per Movie book on tape.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna. I think we need to have a reading of it.
I would be thrilled to record. I know recording audiobooks is like a very painstaking, time-consuming process, but I will read it because it's so. And the great thing about a movie novelization is there's more story that you got to really get in there and know what's going on with Dougie Shears.
Oh my God. Well, I have a question for you. At the end, you mentioned all these icons. Well, icons and semi-icons are basically on the steps singing the reprise to Lonely Hearts Club Band. How many of the people on the staircase singing at the end of this film can you name? Do you think you can come up with 5, 10 off the top of your head?
Well, there's Peter Allen, George Benson, Elvin Bishop, Stephen Bishop, Jack Bruce, Carradine, Carol Channing, Charlotte, Sharon, and Ula, Jim Dandy, Sarah Dash, Rick Derringer, Barbara Dickinson, Donovan, Dr. John, Randy Edelman, Yvonne Elliman, Jose Feliciano, Leif Garrett, Adrian Gervitz, Billy, Marcy Levy, Nils Lachlan, Mark Lindsay. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I will say this. Minnie awesome. Ripperton is in that. And when Maya Rudolph first joined the cast of Saturday Night Live, I remember talking to her and about this movie for some reason. And she's like, my mom was in that. And I'm like, she was? Oh, yeah, she was. And I gave her a tape of it. I gave her a copy of the Sgt. Pepper movie because she hadn't seen it. This was right when she had first joined the SNL cast, like the second week or something. Any time I get to meet somebody that was there, like the Paley brothers were at that.
Right.
So I remember talking to both Andy and Jonathan Paley about like, what was that day like? It was a pretty fun day. It's pretty cool. Everyone's got the same story. It's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool, fun day.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, Carol. Well, yeah, and it's interesting to be like, who's available, who has some star power, because there are definitely times where I'm like, I don't know them, but I know them. It's like I don't know what Jim Dandy really looks like, but if you said that's Jim Dandy, I'd be like, oh yeah, of course it's Jim Dandy. But it's so strange, and it's such a the whole last 10 minutes of the film is such, a rush to depression and then a rush to redemption and like this never happened, and we're turning like Mean Mr. Mustard's bus into a Volkswagen band. We're gonna change you into a priest and a nun. It's like everything's just like, it's all a lark. You've had a good time with us.
Yeah, we provided entertainment. Here's Cousin Brucey and the Pointer Sisters.
Yes, and so at the end it's just like this is how we end a show, right? Like, we're celebrating the Beatles for you. And I really, on this rewatch, I haven't watched it in a while. I really wanted to love this film in a way that, like, oh, I can't wait to see it again. I can definitely put it off. For me, it's just not very fun to watch. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I just think it's really interesting because I have this childhood love of this film. Like, nothing you're saying is absolutely out of line. And as I've gotten older, and I don't think it's because, oh, I know how the soup is made now. I think as I've gotten older, I just look at it as a spectacle. I'm like, wow, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? It shifted. I think from the ages of whatever 0 to 12, probably enjoyed 0 to like 8. I enjoyed this film, and there's probably no sense of irony attached to it. Then I turned 8. I probably don't think about it. The minute that I'm a teenager, and I've seen another film produced by Robert Stigwood that was supposed to do for new wave and punk what Saturday Night Fever did for disco, and that's Times Square. Yeah.
Which I love.
Which is fantastic, and
I love that film.
I'm made fun of for how much I love that.
Oh no, I saw that when that came out.
That's so interesting because I've met one other person who saw it when it came out in New York. It played at the Ziegfeld. What was the experience?
Because I still was young enough not to have any control of my life yet, right?
Yeah.
But I was loving weird things at this point. I thought it was one of the few films that was narrative that didn't feel like a complete fake out at my young age about a scene. Sure, James Chance isn't in this film, right? But as a kid who had never seen New York, it felt very New York. As a kid who was like, I hadn't met people in high school yet, or people who were, like just outside of that system, even people who didn't go to school, maybe. I just hadn't experienced it yet. And I had the biggest crushes on the two leads.
Trini Alvarado and Robin Johnson. Yeah.
I just thought they were like, when she does that dance where she's playing the Ramones.
She does there's the dance. See, this is the thing about the soundtrack for Times Square is like it does have the Ramones. By the way, probably the first time I heard a Ramones song, but she does a dance, and it's to a Desmond Child and Rouge song called "The Night Was Not." They do a dance down. I guess what's like 8th Avenue. They're in Times Square, and they do a dance.
It's not that dance. It's where she's kind of like, it's just her. They're like in a stairwell or something, and she's like, I can't remember. She's like just. If she's trying to get her to loosen up,
she's trying to bust her out of the mental institution. Is straight up, I want to be sedated by the Ramones.
That's what it is.
Which I have a 45 of on RSO Records, the same label.
Oh my God, that's so funny. But yeah, that film. I mean, if I was 3 years older, I'd be like, "That's for kids.
Yeah,
that's bullshit." But it hit me at the right age where I still didn't. That was like 82. Was that when that came out?
Movie came out in 80.
Okay, 80. So basically, you're talking pre-Night Flight, right?
Yeah, it's a pre-Night Flight movie. By like a year. Yeah.
Whatever you could get was all you could get.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like this was an era where there was a lot of new wave featurettes coming my young way. So I have a special spot for that film.
It's hugely important to me, and I have rewatched that recently as well in a theater in the last like year or two, and I was like, this really is good. And there's a whole story to that, and how that film is not what it could have been because of Robert Stigwood. But getting back, I saw that movie for the first time I know when I was 8, and it was a real, like, obviously Devo was around and there was Whip It, and I was aware of that. But Times Square was sort of an introduction to me to new wave. My dad was a Lou Reed fan, and Walk on the Wild Side was, on the soundtrack, and it was such a portal for me. So I don't know, I guess things turn new wave, turn punk for me, and I start going down that road. And by the time I'm a teenager, 12, 13, I'm looking at Sergeant Pepper, which is now this piece of 70s kitsch and 70s nostalgia. And how the fuck did this get made? And this is so embarrassing. And at the same time, I have an appreciation for Peter Frampton, and Frampton Comes Alive. It's been featured in Reality Bites. But at the same time, I know it's kind of lame, Peter Frampton in a fucking kimono on the cover of I'm in You.
It's a confusing time.
It's confusing. And I'm trying to, make out what of it is, part of my identity. And then as I've gotten older, I've embraced I like all of it. That Andrea True Connections more is just as valid as a fucking replacement song, whatever.
Yeah, no, we had to burn our past constantly to transition into new ways of being. Like, your identity was shifting so much, So this show is really funny because I'll be like, I'm sorry, everybody. Yes, I had a ska phase, with the specials and Madness and the English Beat. And then it was done. Like, that movement was done in a year. And then all of a sudden, I was into American hardcore. And then I was into the Paisley Underground. And then I was into, it's just where you went where the wind went. And often it meant kind of being like, I was never really that interested in it, because that's just kind of the way the scene was. You weren't allowed to be like, I like it all. You weren't like, I like it all. You just didn't.
Does it have to be that way anymore is my question, because it's like, I look at my record collection. I'm like, there is stuff from everything.
My daughter's into Gentle Giant and Death Grips, right? She's into, Sylvester and Negative Land. So she's like, it can be wherever you want. But I just feel like, I don't want to repeat myself too much on the show, but it is definitely like, it was music equaled identity.
Absolutely.
And so you couldn't, and sometimes that was really confining, right? And it took bands like the Butthole Surfers and Red Cross and Negative Land too, to like kind of loosen things up for me, to just be like, oh, you can be funny and you can be weird and you can be psychedelic and you can kind of be metally, and it just all started kind of blending together.
I'm really appreciative of and I just saw the Red Cross documentary and read the book, and I really identify with those guys, because I am someone that does put on a pedestal like the way that they would legitimately enjoy and think that the Partridge Family's second album is, as valid as, Pet Sounds. That's sort of like, and maybe this is why I had success with the TV show when I was little, and maybe this is why I continue to be able to just roll with talking to whoever. But it's like, if I like it, I have this strong sense and feeling that if I like it, I think it's cool. And I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I don't believe there's some stuff that I just go, yeah, that sucks. And I'm experiencing something new with like my daughter, who's has her own tastes, obviously informed by what we choose to show her. But I don't particularly love Pink Pony Club by Chapel Rowan, but my daughter does. Does she love it more than Janitor by Suburban Lawns? No, she doesn't. She loves, she sings that every night.
Oh, Sue
And it's
Tissue is
not
so
like
happy.
we're pushing it on her. We're not those parents that are like, you put on this Ramones onesie, right. Far be it, but it's just like, her ears will tune into. I did try to show her, the Sgt. Pepper movie, and she just went, nope. Like,
right.
There's not, and it could have been just the mood that she was in this morning, but she was just like, nope, don't want to watch it. Nope. Put on what she watches. She loves Barbie. And I've explained to her there's lots of Barbie media, but I said, oh, we should show her Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story.
Oh, wow.
And she loves it.
That's incredible.
Barbie play drums. I'm like, yeah, Barbie plays the drums. Look, she really does play the drums. This is Karen Carpenter. And I'm not worried. It's like, it's just, yes, it's a Karen Carpenter died tragically of an eating. I don't think she's taken that stuff. That part
the things I saw when I was young, from being dragged to the theater with my parents, or just having it be on cable accidentally. Like, oh yeah, I saw some of the heaviest shit ever.
I was writing John Waters when I was
City 5. Yeah, it just was like, oh yeah, exactly. Oh my God, it's so funny.
We're not showing her the substance, like right. Or we watched a different.
She's got 2 more years.
Yeah, when she's 4. No, there's certain things where it's like, nah, like yes, she would love the color scheme of Heather's, but I want her to see that when she's 12. I want her to discover that on her own.
Yeah, and some things just don't hold up through someone's eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I remember showing my daughter After Hours because it's one of my favorite films.
Oh yeah.
And she was just a little too young, like to
just you gotta
embrace it. And then we watched it together as an adult. And she's like, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
But she was like, at the time, she's like, well, why do you like this? Like, it's just depressing and frustrating. And I don't think it's funny.
You have to, I think you need more time on the planet to be able to relate to the paranoia, the edge, that movie.
But I saw it when I was her age, when she first saw it, like a preteen, and I was like blown away. It spoke to me because I just was like, I hadn't seen anything like it, and at that time I hadn't seen much Scorsese either, right? I was like 13 or something. So I feel like I'm not you, but I think we come from a similar place of fandom and love of what, I mean, there's a reason I opened a video store. I found comfort in that too.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't like, oh, that'd be cool to do. It was like, no, I am a video store. I am a video store, and I'm going to do what I was lucky enough to have people turn me on this stuff. I want to do that. I want to be the person that, like, if people are stumped, I can help them and just kind of turn people on. And I got to know people in that store.
Because it starts with an act of service is really what it is. It's because it's coming from a completely genuine place. You're not doing this like, yes, you have to make a living and stuff. But when somebody comes in to a video store, a record store, and they're like, I don't know what I want. And you get to be the conduit to art for somebody. I think there's like no more noble of an act than sharing the good stuff. That's what I feel I've been put on this earth to do. And
it's also interesting because if you see someone 3 times a week for 10 years, you get to know the person.
They're in your life.
And then they start to be like, this is what's happening in my marriage. This is what's happening with my children. This is what's happening with my parents. This is what's happening with my job. This is happening with my heart. And I'm like, it was one of the most flattering things just to be a video store owner and have people just want to share with me because they felt like I was there for them in a way after, because we just would talk. Right.
Your work continues in what you're doing here on this show. And look, there's lots of podcasts, and there's lots of podcasts about movies and lots of podcasts about movies and music, but there's, something special about the type of people that you're talking to, the type of movies that they're choosing, the type of person that you are, that like people ask me to do podcasts all the time. I've been like, I don't know. I don't have anything to promote. But this is like, I was like, no, that's gonna be fun. This is gonna be a good one. And it's just an absolute pleasure. And
thank you, Jake.
Same here. Whatever you want to do in the future, let's.
Oh, well, we know we have another one loaded up for a bonus episode. We'll keep it at that. And it is Beatle tangent. So,
and it's
tangential.
Good. Yes. That's a good one.
You may change your tone after I ask this next question, because I always ask the same question at the end of every episode, but I change it depending on what we're talking about. So on a scale from 1 to 112, how many minutes in a hot air balloon with Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees do you give Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band?
How many minutes in a it's a double-edged sword, because Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees as actual human beings on the planet Earth, I give them maybe 3 minutes in an actual hot air balloon before someone gets nauseous. There's like, we got to get off this thing. We know, that's them as actual humans who I know, have families and lives, and but in terms of like as a rating system, a Siskel and Ebert 2 thumbs up kind of situation. I give them 60 minutes in a hot air balloon. I'll tell you why. If this movie was an hour-long variety special, like a network variety special that they went all out for, and they shot on film. Say this was a magical mystery tour, for the 70s on network television on ABC. We might look at this a different way. It might be like,
you're right.
Oh wow, in that context for that genre, like that is amazing. But when we look at it as like, oh, we're going to the movies, the tagline for this film on the poster, a splendid time is guaranteed for all. That's pretty big statement you're making.
The tagline before the movie, before they even written the script. We know what we're leading with. Oh my God. Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. I did 60 was the right answer, as you can see.
Wow.
That's what I had here too. You were right. It splits the middle, but I get it. 3 minutes with the actual people before someone gets sick is absolutely true.
I think maybe Barry Gibb be like, I'm not getting the balloon.
Well, and the cool thing is Peter Frampton can jump out and freeze if Billy Preston's around and just shoot rainbow lasers at him and send him back up. It could be a pretty fun evening.
What did that look like on the lot? I'm just thinking about like the actual, they're on the MGM lot in Culver City, and there's some hot air, but like, what did that look like?
Horrible.
Behind the scenes, and I'm just confused.
We did it, Jake. We power lifted and power washed this amazing film. I appreciate it. Only you could have brought this to me. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday on your favorite podcast app, and additional bonus episodes every Sunday on our Patreon. The show is a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and shows, exclusive limited edition flexi discs and records and CDs featuring guests that have appeared on the show, and other exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie, and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!